Anna Kepner's case has taken a major turn. After months of public anger, courtroom arguments, and questions about why the teenage defendant was allowed to remain with family before trial, Timothy Hudson has now been ordered into custody while he waits for his federal murder trial. The change matters because this is not a new charge, and it is not a verdict. It is a custody decision before trial, but it changes where the case stands right now, and it raises one central question. Why did the judge reverse course after previously allowing him to remain under supervision? The latest confirmed update is that Timothy Hudson, the 16-year-old stepbrother of Anna Kepner, surrendered to U.S. Marshals on June 15 after U.S. Magistrate Judge Edwin Torres revoked his pretrial release, according to court documents reported by People. NBC6, citing court records, also reported that Hudson was ordered detained while awaiting trial, with the judge agreeing with prosecutors that release conditions were no longer enough. That is the clearest current status. Hudson is no longer simply living with a relative under electronic monitoring. He is now in federal custody pending trial, after prosecutors renewed their push to have him detained. The order comes in the federal case connected to the death of 18-year-old Anna Kepner aboard the Carnival Horizon in November 2025. Federal prosecutors have charged Hudson as an adult with first-degree murder and aggravated sexual abuse. The U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of Florida announced in April that a federal grand jury had indicted the 16-year-old as an adult. According to the Justice Department, court records allege that while the ship was in international waters en route to Miami, Hudson sexually assaulted and intentionally killed Kepner. The Miami-Dade Medical Examiner's Office determined her cause of death to be mechanical asphyxiation. The Justice Department also stressed that an indictment is only an allegation and that the defendant is presumed innocent unless proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. That presumption matters here. Hudson has pleaded not guilty, and the case has not gone to trial. Nothing about this custody ruling is a conviction. But the ruling does show that the judge now views the risk analysis differently than he did earlier in the case. The story began during what was supposed to be a family cruise. Anna Kepner, a high school senior from Titusville, Florida, was traveling aboard the Carnival Horizon with family members. Court filings and reporting say she was sharing a stateroom with Hudson and another younger teen. She was last seen returning to that stateroom on the night of November 6, 2025. The next day, she was found dead, and the ship later returned to Port Miami. Because the alleged crime occurred in international waters, the case moved into federal jurisdiction. That is one reason the legal process has looked different from many state murder cases. Minors are rarely prosecuted in federal court, and early in the case, Hudson was initially charged as a juvenile. Under that earlier status, Judge Torres allowed him to remain in the custody of a family member with electronic monitoring. That earlier decision became one of the most debated parts of the case. Prosecutors wanted Hudson detained, but the court initially found that the government had not met the burden required under juvenile detention standards. That is important context because the court was not only weighing the seriousness of the accusation, it was also applying a legal framework that treats juveniles differently from adults before trial. Then the case changed. A federal grand jury indicted Hudson as an adult. That shift altered the possible consequences and the legal posture of the case. According to the Justice Department, Hudson now faces first-degree murder and aggravated sexual abuse charges, and if convicted, he faces a maximum penalty of life in prison. After that adult indictment, prosecutors again asked the court to revoke his release. NBC6 reported that the judge's detention order said the alleged conduct itself was sufficient to require detention, and that no curfew, monitor, or custodial placement could be trusted to contain the danger the court found. The same report said Hudson was to be transferred to the custody of the U.S. Marshal, held at Citrus County Jail for a mental health evaluation, and then moved no later than July 10 to the juvenile facility at Miami-Dade's Metro West Detention Center. People reported another striking part of the order. Judge Torres wrote that the prosecution's case for forcible rape was beyond clear and convincing, and that the alleged circumstances raised serious concern about danger to Hudson himself and others. Because this is an active case involving allegations, that language should be understood as the judge's assessment for pretrial detention, not as a final finding by a jury. The key legal distinction is simple. The court is not deciding guilt at this stage. The court is deciding whether the defendant should be released or detained before trial. That decision can turn on danger to the community, flight risk, the seriousness of the charges, the strength of evidence for detention purposes, and whether any conditions of release can reasonably manage those concerns. Before this latest order, the public had seen a different moment in court. On May 27, a federal judge allowed Hudson to remain free for the time being while considering arguments after a detention hearing in Miami. Associated Press reporting carried by NBC6 said Torres wanted to speak with the U.S. Marshals Service about logistics, including where Hudson could be held if detained. At that point, Hudson left the courthouse rather than being immediately taken into custody. That is why the June update is significant. The earlier hearing left the custody question unresolved. The new order answered it. Hudson is to be detained before trial. The public record also shows why the case has drawn national attention. The Justice Department says the alleged events occurred aboard a cruise ship in international waters. Local and national reporting says Anna was found concealed under a bed in the cabin. Prosecutors have described evidence they say connects Hudson to the alleged crime, while the defense has maintained his not guilty plea and has argued that he complied with earlier release conditions. Those are competing courtroom positions, and the jury has not heard the case yet. The family's public statements have also shaped attention around the case. Anna's father, Christopher Kepner, previously said the family was putting trust in the justice system to pursue the truth with care and integrity. He also called the situation deeply painful and complex for the entire family, according to Associated Press reporting, carried by NBC6 and ABC affiliates. What changed most clearly is Hudson's legal status before trial. Earlier, he was living with a relative under court supervision. Now, after the adult indictment and renewed prosecution arguments, he has been ordered into custody. That does not end the case. It moves the case into a new phase before trial. The trial is expected to begin in September, according to NBC6's latest report. Hudson has pleaded not guilty and faces a maximum sentence of life in prison if convicted. There are still important things the public does not know. Some evidence has been filed under seal. The full defense case has not been presented at trial. The jury has not weighed the evidence. And while reporting has included disturbing allegations, the safest and most accurate way to cover the story is to keep separating what prosecutors allege from what has been proven in court. The Startline takeaway is this. The headline is not that the case is over. It is that the court has now changed Hudson's pretrial status. The same defendant who was previously allowed to stay with family under monitoring has now been ordered detained until trial. The reason, based on the judge's order as reported by multiple outlets, is that the court now sees the adult charges, the alleged conduct, and the risk concerns as too serious for supervised release. For Anna Kepner's family, this ruling may answer one part of the public question that has followed the case for months, but the larger legal question remains ahead. Prosecutors still have to prove the charges in court. The defense still has the right to challenge the evidence, and the defendant remains presumed innocent unless and until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. For now, the confirmed update is that Timothy Hudson is in custody pending trial. The federal case remains active, and the next major milestone is the September trial date, unless the court schedule changes again.